One of the copies, we are at place Dalet, line 18 in page Yural, and we were speaking about how there is the level of both the level of Gvul and Bli Gvul in the Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'olamai and in Bachar B'Yaakov B'Banav. Spoke about that when Bachar Be'olamai, because of the Bechira, even though the world is limited, still in all there must be a union and a level of the legal joined with it. And in a similar vein, we spoke about the other way around. When Hashem chose Yaakov and his children, covered by Rosh Chodesh Shel Geula, the idea of Geula indicates that there was first something indicating on concealment and covering and Golus. Then, from that concealment and covering and Golus, we came to the situation of Geula, which means, again, the union and the joining of even when we are found in a place in this world where we're in a state of being in a level of Gvul. That is why it's a level of Golus and Shibud. Therefore, we need to have a Rosh Chodesh of Geula, that we should leave Shibud, we should leave enslavement and go to the state of Geula. How is that done? Through a level that's beyond the natural way. That's the Anhaga Nisis, the miraculous way of doing things in the month of Nis. So now we're going to connect it back with what we asked earlier in the Maimer about the first Rashi in Chumash that seemingly joins two opposites. It speaks about the Torah should not have begun from Reishis, it should have started from Achodesh Azelochem. This is the month for you where it first starts talking about the halachas that a Yid has to know as a Yid. And why do you start with Bereshis, Loslam Nachos Goy? And we said that seemingly these are two opposite extremes. How is it even possible to compare the two? Now he says in line 18, that's also the content of this statement of Rabbi Yitzchak. Torah should not have begun only from where it says, this month is for you, Pasach beBereshis, and he started instead with Bereshis for reasons that we're soon going to explain. But the idea behind this is, why did he begin from Bereshis? Torah has no boundary to it, has no limitations to it. Torah on its own is beyond the world. Like it's explained in Kabbalah, according to Kabbalah, the Arizal explained. Why does the Torah begin with the letter Beis? Seemingly, Torah is such a high and lofty thing. Shouldn't it begin with an Aleph, not wait like it's brought down the Farshim? Yeah, the Aleph was given over by Anoich, but the whole Torah isn't it so high? Shouldn't it begin with the letter Aleph, which indicates the first and the highest and so on? Because Torah came down here, and the way Torah descended from its high place, there it's a base. Torah was a Torah, the way it came down here below. Torah is from the expression of a lesson. That's already Torah, the way it comes down in the world of creation. So the base indicates on Bria. Perhaps the Aleph is also on Atzilus, I don't remember right now. So when Torah functions as a lesson, as a communication, something that has to do with the lessons of this world, so it descends from its highest state of the Aleph to the state of the base. The beginning of the Torah is in the world of Atzilus, that's beyond and higher in the worlds of Bri Yisirasi. Because when we look at Torah at its core state, at its highest most state, it should have begun with HaChodesh Azalachem, because HaChodesh Azalachem, through Inyan HaBli Gvul, that's the idea of without boundaries, as we said, That's Mishabachari Biyakiva Bono. That's the level of revealing the Hanhaganissis, the miraculous, completely above nature. Yet, in the end, Torah did not begin with it. Apple became still no top of Yud Beis, possible Bereshis. The Torah began with Bereshis. How come? Mishum koyach ma'asav higid la'amei losses lam nachlas goyim, because the power of his actions he related to his nation to give them the inheritance of the nation. What does that mean? That Yidden need to be not out of this world in a way of just bleakful, transcending, miraculous, but we have to engage in the world and take over the inheritance of the nations. We need to join with the world and bring Torah into this world. That's the intention of above. To make a home for Hashem down here below. And it's not just a purpose, but that's everything's purpose. So, that is the ultimate purpose of the entire chain descent of all the worlds. It's not for the higher world. They have no purpose in and of themselves. Since they only lost by coming into being, they are beset from the light of Hashem's face. The goal and the purpose is specifically this low world, specifically down here below. Nachlas Goyim, the inheritance of the nations. So that is the idea of Bereshis. Bereshis, the lower level of the Torah, is to indicate Torah descended from its high perch, because the intention was not the high levels. The purpose was not in the high levels. They didn't gain anything by coming into being. The purpose is down here below. That's the idea of making this world into a dira, making this world into a home for Hashem. That is the idea of giving the Yidden the inheritance of the Goyim, taking something that's in the realm of Klippa and making it a holy place, a dwelling for Hashem, a home for Hashem. That's also the main intention in the giving of the Torah. That's why this is at the beginning of the Torah. That the Torah was given specifically down here below. In other words, in the simple shot of the answer, that why did the Torah have to begin with Bereshis? That is to be able to stop any goyim's complaints about Eretz Yisrael being robbed from the nations of the world. So for that, the Torah began with Bereshis to tell us Hashem created it, Hashem gave it to who he wanted, then he gave it to whoever he wanted now. The issue over here is, but then it doesn't have to be part of Torah. That is a very important piece of knowledge. It's a very important thing that the Yidden need to have to defend themselves from world opinion, but that's not part of what Torah is. Torah is B'lashon Hara. But according to the way that Rebbe explains it, that it's about transforming the world and making the world, the Nachlas Goy, into something that a Yid possesses and brings brings about to be a home for the Eibush down here below. So then it's very well understood that it's the beginning of Torah, because that's the entire purpose of the Torah. The Torah's purpose was to make this world into a home for the Eibush. That's why the beginning of the Torah has to set this forth. Where do we see that the Torah's purpose is to be able to make a home down here below? Like Moshe responded to the Malachim Shetanu, they complained. They told Hashem, place your glory on the heavens. Don't give the Torah to the Jewish people down here. Give it to us. And Moshe Rabbeinu responded to him by Hashem's directive. Says, I'm Hashem, your God, that took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Did you then descend to Mitzrayim? What is the indication of Mitzrayim? We said before, the Golus that preceded Geula, that indicates the limitations of this world that need to be brought up and broken those boundaries and limitations, bring into the gevul of the world the level of geula, the bli gevul dan haganis, lahamshich in habli gevul ba'olam will go to draw down the infinite of Hashem into the world and into limitations itself. That union of the two, dan haganis is chodesh al geula. Since we know the end result is what came up in his thought first, meaning a person, let's say, builds a building. The end result of the building is what's the first thing he pictures in his mind. He pictures in his mind, I want to have a house with X amount of rooms, X amount of floors, to be able to live in, etc., etc. Then the following thoughts are the different things that he needs to do to be able to get there. He needs to have the materials, he needs to have the workers, he needs to build in such a way, he needs to get the lot, etc., etc. But the end is what comes up first. So the same thing, Kaviyachal by Hashem. The first thing is the loss Islam nachos goyim. The first thing is the end result. The end result is we need to make this world into a home for the Eibush. That's why he begins with Bereshis, that right away gives that purpose set right away at the beginnings. Line 13, Lachein Pasuk Bereshis HaToydam. Therefore, he began with the words Bereshis. He began with the story of Bereshis. He began the Toydam. Shemitzad Atzma Toyd on its own, if not for the purpose aspect to be able to transform the world. Should have began with the halachs of the Torah. Should have began with what a yid needs to do. Why did it have to begin with Bereshis then? Draw down in the Torah, the way the Torah comes down here below. We said that the letter Beis of Bereshis indicates that lower level of Torah, the way this Torah descended in this low world. We need to draw down into it from the essence of the Torah, the way it is above. By days, we are able to elevate this low world, the level of Gevul, to the level of Bli Gevul. That should be at the level of infinite. At the same way, there had to be, just like in Torah, there had to be these two things, Bereshis and Achodesh, to be able to bring the Bereshis up to the level of Bli Gevul. First, you have to start off with Bereshis, establish the Gevul, and then bring in the Achodesh, the Bli Gevul. The same thing in the general aspect of creation. First, there was the Bachar by Lamai, and then there was Bachar by Yaakov Abana. So too, it's concerning the world and Yidden, Yaakov Abana, Yaakov and his sons and his children. Initially, Hashem chose his world, which is the same thing like Pasuk Bereshis, beginning with the Gevul, beginning with the creation, beginning with the limitations and the concealment of this world. Because the ultimate purpose is down here in this low world. Only afterwards Hashem chose Yaakov and his children, and he established a Rosh Chodesh of redemption. Also Yaakov and his children were initially in a state of exile and enslavement. Even Yaakov himself. And only after they were in a state of limitation, of legal, of Helam, of Tzimtzum, etc., they were in a state of exile, they were in a state of enslavement. Then, in that, he brought in the Rosh Chodesh of Geula because it's about the joining of the Bli Gevul and the Gevul. He even sits top, it's like a one year last one, he's brought up top of page, Gimel. Since the ultimate purpose is to make a home for Hashem down here below, there's a need that also Yaakov and his children, which indicate the idea of the infinite and the unbounded. The olam should come down in the limitations of this world, golus for shibud, exile and enslavement. And only afterwards he established in it In the world, he established a head of month of Geula. To be able to elevate that limitations of this world to the level of Bleak. So Torah has to be that way. First, begin with the world with the limitations, then bring in the levels beyond the world. And even Yaakov and his children themselves similarly have to be first in the world with the limitations. Then, by them having a revelation of Bleak, so then this lifts up the world as well. Through that, they will make from the world a home for the Eibishter down here below. Any question? Line 8. I say, that's what the Medrash says, that when Hashem established and when he chose the world, he established in the world Rosh Chodesh and years, heads of months and heads of years. That is the order for the perspective of the month of Tishrei. That's associated with the way the world runs by the laws of nature. When he chose Yaakov and his children, he established a head of month of redemption. That is the order from the perspective of the month of Nisan. That Nisan, as we said, Nisan is from the word miracles, that's associated with the level of miracles. So as the Rebbe always talks about many Mamorim, all inyanim that are reflected in the big picture also have to be reflected in our avodah. That in our avodah, we have an avodah that's connected with anhagativis, with the natural way of running the world. That's a more natural, limited avodah. And then there's a supernatural type of avodah. Line 13, these two ways of Hashem running the world. In present time, once the title was given, so now Hashem's running of the world is a result of these two ways, how they're reflected in Avodah V'Yidin. Avodah Shal Pitam V'Das, there's an Avodah service that is done based by reason. It's a rational type of Avodah, meaning it's Avodah Al Pitoida. But you cross your T's, you dot your I's. It says in Shulchan Aruch, I'll do it. It doesn't say in Shulchan Aruch. Why do I have to go any further than that? He avodah mugbelas. That's a limited avodah. And when our avodah is a very limited fashion, what says in the book, fine. I check it off. I've done it. I was yotze. More than that, I don't have to go further than that. Then there's avodah that's beyond reason, avodah built in mugbelas, and avodah without boundaries, with all your might, which we know Chassidus always talks about, means a superlative, over the top, without limitations. So when avodah is without limitations, so it brings down the revelation of the month of Nisan, which is also without limitations. The idea behind this is the way we run the world from the perspective of the month of Tishrei. That's an orderly hand. It comes through the avodah of a person. The Adam la'amal yula. A person was born to toil. In such a way, when a person does an organized avodah, so it starts off initially comes the month of Tishrei, which also in the yearly cycle eventually leads into the time of Shuzman Acharisha, Vazriya, the time of plowing, it's a time of sowing. Afterwards, we come to the month of Nisan. What happens in the month of Nisan? There's the new crop. First thing is, we bring the carbon omer from the new grain, Uzman Ksiras Oirim, because Nisan is the time when we harvest the barley, so that's why we bring the carbon omer, second day of Pesach, from the first of the barley. And afterwards, a few months later, comes the month of Sivan. Sivan Shuzman Ktsiras Chitim. That's the time when we have the harvest of the wheat. That's why we bring the Shtei Halechem, and the Beis Hamikdash was brought from the first wheat crop in a similar vein to the Karpna Omer that was brought from the first barley. Until the conclusion of the year in the Yom Tov Sukkot, which is called Chag HaOsif, called the Yom Tov of ingathering, even though you harvested earlier at the beginning of the summer or spring, but then it has to be dried and so on and so forth, whatever all the agricultural needs are. And when is it gathered in? Everything from the field, it's gathered in on Sukkot. So that is very orderly, very organized. So Tishrei is about an organized, step-by-step type of avoid. The way the world runs from the perspective of the month of Nisan, instead of working and going through the entire process step by step and so on and so forth, but Nisan, if we look at Nisan as being the beginning, so I go into the field, hey, everything's growing over there. I have everything ready. Beginning from the month of Nisan, immediately has in the month of Nisan the barley harvest, and immediately after that, after a short while, in the month of Sivan, he has also the harvest of the wheat. Man Kotzer, Chagasukis was Man Osif, and the month of Sukkot is the Yom Tov of gathering. It's also actually similar to the way they actually went into Eretz Yisrael. They didn't go into Eretz Yisrael after the years that they were in the desert in Tishrei, which means that they would have to all of a sudden now start planting and sowing the fields. But they came into Eretz Yisrael with everything being ready for them. It was already set and prepared. They had fields of barley and very soon ripe wheat to eat from and so on. These two approaches of doing an orderly step-by-step avoid, or that everything is set up and ready for us to consume. There's two types of ways in the avoid of a person. There's the avoid of the month of Tishrei, that's from below to above. It's also the avoid of the month of Nisan in such a manner that he's given everything from above already prepared. In other words, I don't have to struggle with the limitations of the world. I don't have to battle the limitations of the world. I don't need the plowing and the sowing and the planting. I'm already in a higher state. Rather, his avoid is only in rising up from strength to strength in Kedusha itself, which we're going to connect with Mashiach's times, because that's also, our Mimer recently had this in a previous Mimer, that in Mashiach's times, we won't be dealing with anything negative, because it's already going to be the Birur Hara. All the negative will have been already refined. So what's our avoid going to be when Mashiach comes? We're not going to be dealing with Birur on its tzotzis, with elevating the sparks from Klippa, because the Klippa is gone, but rather we're going to be going up higher and higher in good itself. That's just like, instead of struggling with the world, by the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. You won't have to plow, you won't have to sow, you won't have to plant, but rather everything will be ready. Even Begashmias, that's the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes. He says in line 30, the fact that a person's avodah now is in a way that's out of this world, in a way that everything is ready for him. It's therefore it's also preparation for the future time, for Mashiach. Like it says, that Eretz Yisrael in the future will give forth ready-made cakes, ready-made clothing, fine woolen clothing. And a woman will give birth daily without all the birth pangs and so on. In other words, all of this is ready-made. There won't be all the waiting and necessity for going through many different types of stages and so on. But it's going to be in a way of coming from above, in a way of nissen, in a way of a miraculous thing. But that miraculous from above thing in the times of from above, say the Rishtalshalos, from above limitation, that's going to take place when Mashiach comes, is a result of our avodah being beyond limitation. The Indians then say no, they say no after Bismanak also, because this comes about through our actions and service now in the time of Golos in such a manner where we don't struggle and we don't have to overcome. We go initially in a way of bleakness. So that's the manner of the avoid of Shabbos. Shabbos, we don't engage in this world. Shabbos, we're above from this world. We have to act on Shabbos. Our state of mind has to be as if all our work is done. We might be in the middle of a very big project, a very difficult situation at work, but as soon as Friday hits, a Friday night hits, as soon as he comes to Shul Friday night, it's in his mind, his emotional state, his mental state is, I just finished everything. Just like Hashem finished the entire world in 6 days. When it came Shabbos, everything ceased. The same thing, that has to be my attitude, a Shabbos-tic attitude. And that a Shabbos-tic attitude is that everything is given to him from above, ready-made. But you could say we don't live in a state of Shabbos. There is the 6 days of the week. Mashiach's times is a day of fully Shabbos. They said, the Talmud Chacham Mikra Shabbos. We know that a Talmud Chacham is called Shabbos. So since a Talmud Chacham is Shabbos, that means that the state of Shabbos is Shaykh by every Yid. Every Yid can attain this type of transcendence from the world of Shabbos that is associated with a Talmud Chacham. How come? Because at the time that he's studying Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs, he finds himself in a state and situation that matters of the world do not occupy him whatsoever, do not have any significance by him whatsoever. The Rebbe used to speak about. This was before there were cell phones. The Rebbe used to speak about how the idea of a Talmud Chacham, or the idea of how a person has to study Torah in a way of V'yisitum Torah, set aside times for study, that when he's learning, nothing is to disturb him. He's not supposed to pick up the phone. Even he brings an example, even the non-Jewish maidservant knows that when the balabas is sitting and learning, you don't enter his room, you don't disturb him. He is now sitting and learning. This is similar to saying that all your work is already done. So when a person already applies this in his life and his world, now this ushers in the time when it's going to be so completely in the entire world. By days as through this we merit fulfillment of what was foretold. If you'll go in my statutes, I will give you your rains in its time, and the earth will give its produce, and the tree of the field will give its fruits. Like Chazal explained all the different explanations in not just the literal rain, literal produce, the literal fruits, but it has many different connotations. Chazal explained Adlasima Parsha till the conclusion of Parsha Kokaisai by Oil Peskin Muse, or that not the Parsha at the center, but the section that talks about the brachas, that will lead you upright. Yes, Mashiach Tzidkenu, because of Mamish in the coming Mashiach Tzidkenu, speedily.